Hey everybody, Dr. Zuleta here and welcome to this module. This module excites me a lot because it gets a little bit into the nitty-gritties of how our brain works and how our adrenal glands work. And so we're gonna break down what is called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And that's just a mouthful for a bunch of hormones that work from the top to the bottom, from the brain to our adrenal glands. And we're going to break down how that works and why is it important for us to be able to dial in on this, to be able to reverse the type 2 diabetes, to be able to achieve type 2 diabetes remission. Now, let me share my screen with you guys right now. Let me share this with you guys so that you can see what I'm seeing. I'm going to share with you a picture of what the adrenal, the hypothalamic adrenal axis looks like. And I showed you guys in the last module a little bit of how that works, right? And so we have our brain, and in our brain, there is a little piece of our brain called the hypothalamus. From the hypothalamus, this little chemical gets released that is called the corticotropic releasing hormone. The corticotropic releasing hormone goes to a little area of our brain called the pituitary gland that is right there inside, like right on top of our nose, like into the brain. And then this pituitary gland releases adrenocorticotropic hormone, right? This adrenocorticotropic hormone then goes to the kidneys and activates the adrenal glands. On top of the kidneys, the adrenal glands, and then that activates cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and all these hormones that influence our body. We are mainly going to focus on what we focused on last week, carrying it over into a different skill set. And so we're going to focus on cortisol and why cortisol is so important. So this is really, really important here. Right there. And so what happens is that, let's say that you have stress or symptoms of depression. What happens is that your brain thinks is in despair. Your brain thinks it's going to die. Your brain thinks that it's something wrong. And so what happens is that it releases a bunch of cortisol. It releases a bunch of cortisol right here. I'm going to draw it for you guys right here. So it releases a bunch of cortisol. And so that causes what is called subclinical hypercortisolism, or that there is slow levels of cortisol in your body. These low levels of cortisol, like not low, but like that they're elevated, but they're not so elevated that they become like that you can see it on tests, that you can see it way high up abnormal, but it's just enough to start causing problems. And so this leads to intra-abdominal fat. This leads to waist circumference. And I don't know why they don't have it here, but that actually leads to insulin resistance also. And then the cortisol will lead to insulin resistance itself. Elevated hemoglobin A1C, elevated triglycerides, and decreased HDL. How crazy is that? Now, our autonomic nervous system gets activated too. Whenever there's a stressful situation, whenever we think we're going to die, whenever we think that there is something going to happen. And nowadays, you know, it's not so much about bears chasing us, but maybe about not being able to make rent next month, maybe about not being able to pay something next month, maybe about something else at work. Maybe the boss is, you know, mean and not somebody that you want to work with. And so those responses cause a lot of problems, And so that leads to insulin resistance, it leads to hemoglobin A1C, it leads to triglycerides, and it leads to low HDL. Now, interestingly enough, this also causes inflammation. So no wonder why depressed people are in pain. They cause inflammatory markers like interleukin-6 go up and increase CRP. Increased CRP, C-reactive protein, is what we call an inflammatory protein. So it creates pain in the body, period, literally. How do you deal with pain? You activate the pleasure response. How do you activate the pleasure response? You take opioid medications or you take sugar, right? That's how we're dealing with pain right now. But there is other ways to do it. That doesn't have to be that way, because those ways are going to cause you to have more and more and more problems. And that leads to erectile dysfunction. And then for men, PCOS for women. And so that leads to type 2 diabetes, right? And so it's pretty big, you know, the influence of the stress, how that happens, it can cause a lot of problems. So I'm gonna erase all of this here, erase it all, and we're gonna go into the next one, which is this picture right here. And what I want you to take away from is like, forget about all of the little things and all of the little things, just focus on what I'm going to point at, right? You're gonna have the hippocampus right there. There's a part of the brain. This part of the brain is connected to the hypothalamus, right? The hypothalamus produces corticotropic releasing hormone, like I said before, right? That then goes into the anterior pituitary. These little pieces right here are these ones right there, right? It's the same. It's just a bigger version of it. And that goes into it releases adrenocorticotropic hormone, and adrenal, that comes from the word adrenal. And so that activates the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland in top of the kidneys, what happens? What happens? It releases a bunch of cortisol. It releases a bunch of cortisol. And then what happens is that this cortisol will increase the blood sugar, your levels of blood sugar. It will make the pancreas make more insulin, and it will make the liver make fatty acids. And so that's what happens. So you're going to start having insulin responses. You're going to start having a bunch of sugar in your body, and your body thinks that it's going to need to store more sugar if it's a sustained problem. And so it takes these fatty acids and it puts them into more sugar. Now, cortisol inhibits the uptake of glucose into the muscles. It's so crazy, right? And so there is all of these things that are happening right now, but the main thing is that it leads to elevated blood sugars, which is a vicious cycle, because hyperglycemia and hypercortisolism result in a vicious cycle that will come back around and start making the same problems. And so people go up and down through this cycle, up and down through this cycle, up and down, up and around through this cycle. More cortisol, more glucose, more insulin, more cortisol, more glucose, more insulin, more weight. More cortisol, more glucose, more insulin, more weight. And so it can become such a cycle that somebody gains weight, gets more insulin, and is more stressed out. And so it's a vicious cycle. Now they're stressed not only about what was happening, but now they're stressed out because their bodies are changing, because they're gaining weight, because nothing seems to work. So really, really, really key to understand this concept of the cortisol response with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And now I'm going to share with you, so how do we lower it? So last week, your task was to get a little bit more sleep. I know some of you messaged that that already, like you feel so rested just when you take time to sleep more than what you used to. It's amazing, just feeling rested. Just feeling rested. And I can't tell you enough, for me, it has been a big process, because as you know me, I'm pretty going. And when I was trying to build Thrive Med Academy, I was not sleeping. I was trying to figure out how to do this, how to keep up the job at work, how to do that. And it caught up with me. It made me realize that I wasn't making the proper decisions. My executive functions were not working well. And so I had to really take time to look at the research of sleep and be able to find out that sleep is key. Sleep is key to be able to have high quality of life, to thrive in life, right? And so we did that last week. Is there anything else that we can do to lower these levels of cortisol? Is there anything else that we can do? Absolutely. And so a lot of this study is amazing, because it comes out of some of the studies. They're realizing that people that are depressed, they have more cortisol levels. And so there is all these studies that are trying to figure out how to lower cortisol levels. And so this one, for instance, is one with yoga, right? And so what is yoga? I know people say like yoga. Some people take it into like a super spiritual realm. Some people are not. Some people just do it with fitness. Yoga is just movement and stretching of the body, right? Of course, you can take that word from the Hindu perspective, and that's a completely different story. You know, it's more about like knowing yourself and developing self-awareness, and developing like, you know, the God within you in a way. And so, but that's completely a different like philosophical approach to it. We're looking now like at the more physiological approach to it, which is, you know, stretching and relaxation. And so why do we know that it's a relaxation response? Because the cortisol levels drop. And so in some sort of movement, in some sort of stretching, in some sort of way, this will help you lower your cortisol levels if you want to do it that way. We're going to go into the different way. We're going to go into the different way too. And so in this study, they showed that the serum cortisol levels was higher in depressive compared to control. So we know that. So depressive people have more cortisol levels. And then if they took a movement, their cortisol levels dropped significantly, significant drop, statistically significant drop at the end of the treatment with yoga. And so that's really, really interesting, because now we know that their score, their antidepressant effect, or is a score that you can keep track of, went down. So it's amazing. It's amazing the effects that this can have. Now, of course, that relates to insulin and diabetes because of what I shared with you about the hypothalamic pituitary axis, because it actually turns into a really, really negative cycle. Now, what's another way? Let's say you don't want to do yoga. Okay, what's another way to do it? Way light exposure, right? So think about this. If you're working night shift and you're rarely seeing like a sunrise, it could be affecting you. It could be affecting you. It could be helping you too if you did, right? Because our bodies are on almost a way to, our bodies are wired that as the sun hits our eyes, we need to get up. And so what happens to our bodies? We produce more cortisol, right? And so in a way, this is what is called eustress, that we produce more cortisol. But what happens is that the bright light actually lowers the cortisol levels in a way that is more sustainable for the body. So it's not such like a stress, but it's more like a tame effect, a balanced effect. And so if you're working night shift or something like that, and if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to get fitter, if you're trying to build muscle, if you're trying to lower insulin resistance, if you're trying to reverse your type 2 diabetes, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard to do that. You can do it, but this is one way that you could choose to do it. If you wanted to look into that, to say, hey, maybe, what if I start working during the day? What if I start doing a different sort of work in a different time? I wonder if that had an impact in my health, right? And so just thinking about that could be huge, okay? Now, the next thing is being able to, and so yeah, bright light exposure significantly reduce plasma cortisol levels. Plasma is just the blood. So it reduced the levels of the blood, the cortisol, at both of the circadian phases study. I'm going to go into that. What is the circadian phases? I'll go into that in a second. And it says that, as you can see right here, I'm going to go backwards. Right here, supports the existence of a mechanism by which photic information can acutely influence the human adrenal gland. So the light that we receive goes through our brain, goes through our nervous system, it activates the adrenal glands. Absolutely, we know this from different studies with not only with cortisol, but also with serotonin. And so the light will actually, there's another study, and that's another story for another time, but there is also studies that the light will increase your level of serotonin, and serotonin can counteract the bad effects of cortisol. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the best of both worlds. You get a motor and you get the driver, right? So you get both things. If you have a motor without the driver, you're gonna go all over the place, right? And so that's one way to look at it. And the cool thing is that here is how it works. And so here's how we put this whole thing together, right? We talked about melatonin last week and a little bit about cortisol, but we're diving a little more deep about cortisol. And so cortisol goes up around 9 a.m. in the morning, but it starts going up around sunset. As soon as that sunrise, as soon as that sun hits our eyes, boom, levels of serotonin are kicking in and levels of cortisol are kicking in. Imagine if you don't have the light, you're going to have levels of cortisol inhibited and in not balanced. And so your blood sugars, your adrenal glands are going to take more of a hit. And if you have the light, it actually lowers the levels of cortisol, so it doesn't do it in overdrive. So it's really, really important. Now at night, around 9 p.m., your melatonin levels are going to go in and they peak anywhere between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. And then they start dropping again. At the same time, the cortisol starts going up. And so that's why it's really important to do this. And to be able to figure out that this is that this is so impactful for our health. And so your mission for this week is to be able to do one of those activities. Pick a movement activity. You can go get a massage. I didn't share those results with you guys, but there is massage. You can go to Hotstone. They're like, $40. I think you can get your first one free. Go get a first one free. Or go for a walk in nature. Nature also has a huge effect on the levels of cortisol level. And I'm going to share with you, I will share with you that result right now. Let's see if I can pull it up right here. Nature does have a major impact on the levels of cortisol right here. And so this is the study, and there is many like this. This is just one study that I can show you right now, but there is many studies that if you go to suggest that visiting natural environments can be beneficial in reducing both physical and psychological stress levels. With visitors to natural environments reporting significant lower levels of stress than their counterparts visiting a more urbanized outdoor settings or indoor exercise facilities. So outdoors, you're getting all of those benefits. You're getting the light, you're getting the air, you're getting all of those benefits. And so that's one study. Now, if you don't want to do any of that and you want to stay at home, you can lower your blood levels of cortisol by doing mindful meditation. If you Google on YouTube, mindful meditation, just do one. Pick one that, try a couple of them and pick one that you like. Mindful meditation can help a lot. Can help a lot. I used to do, when I lived in Detroit, I lived in 8 Mile, Detroit. If you guys are familiar with Eminem, I lived in that neighborhood where he came out of. I used to work at a hospital there when I was in medical school, and I used to live in a pretty bad area of town. It was so bad. Oh my goodness, it was so bad that when I used to come home and there was drug dealers outside of my doors. It was a hotel that was turned into an apartment complex. And when Wednesday night hit around, the whole place turned into like a party, like a club. It was crazy. It was the craziest, most random thing. And all these doors were open always. And it was just the weirdest thing. And so the music was blasting. There was, smell of weed. And so I had to figure out, I was studying for my boards. I had to pass my boards. I was working a lot because we were doing intensive care unit. And so I was getting home after studying, maybe at midnight, 1, 2 a.m. I have to get up at 6 a.m. the next morning, And so at that time, you're just trying to get through it, right? And what helped me go to sleep? It was mindful. It was, I put my headphones in so I wouldn't listen to any of that. And then I did this body scan meditation. So if you Google body scan meditation, it takes you like from your head to your eyes, to your jaw, to your neck, to your shoulders, to your chest, to your stomach, to your pelvis, to your thighs, to your legs, to your calves, to your feet. and then to the way that you feel. And he starts working through all of that, and it's so relaxing. And that's how I went to sleep every single night. Because I was so wired, because I used to drink caffeine at that time, and so when I went and laid in bed, I was like all over the place, and there was so much going on in my life, and I was looking forward to graduation, and all these things were happening, and so I was just really wired, and I had to learn how to relax, and the body scan. To this day, I do it. When I can't go to sleep at night, I close my eyes and I learn the pattern of how to do it. And and then I do it with breath holding exercises. And I'm asleep in about a couple of cycles of it. And so it's really important to, you can pick one of those things, nature, you can pick the meditation, you can pick going out and either put a timer or take a picture of outside, take a picture of your timer, whatever it is you choose to do, just take a picture of it and post it in the group so that we know what you did and we can learn from each other about what things work and what things didn't, right? And so with that, we will level our levels of cortisol, right? In theory, we will do that. And so that's really important. We talked about melatonin last time, and now we're going to be talking about cortisol levels, and that comes together. All right? That is it for this week. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week. Please reach out. Please reach out. It's amazing to see all of the results. It is truly amazing to see all of your results, and I am so inspired by all of you. All right? Until next time, Dr. C here. Thrive on, thrive forward, and take it easy. Bye-bye.